Elizabeth Warren drops out of 2020. Flip the Senate blue trends on Twitter. Wisconsin joins the border wall lawsuit. States rally to curb the impact of the new requirements for food stamps. And we have a look at what daylight savings time might do to your health. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Well, good morning, everybody. It sounds like my desktop is alive over here when I've got my phone going off and everything else going off here. So we'll go ahead and get that taken care of. Of course, this is Contemporary. We got a lot of news to talk about today. I mean, this was a pretty packed news day. I was just looking at Twitter all day yesterday while I was at work and grabbing links and trying to find the best ones to do. And we've got a lot to talk about anyway. But the first thing we need to talk about, of course, was the great news that we heard while I was on my way to work. I just closed out the camera, and all of a sudden the Contemporary from yesterday was no longer valid, which was sad. But it's still a happy note anyway, because Elizabeth Warren decided that she was going to suspend her presidential campaign. This was a long time coming. I mean, she was the first one, and so of course she was leading the polls as soon as she started, or at least we thought she was, but it turns out that more people were excited about Biden than they were about Warren when Warren was in and Biden wasn't. So she didn't really get the traction she was looking for, but I digress on that. She is out. Now, of course, she has not necessarily pledged her delegates yet. Most people are assuming right now she's going to pledge to Bernie Sanders, but I don't know at this point. I don't necessarily know what's going to happen. This has been a circus from the beginning. I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at this point if somebody else decided to jump in. And people keep saying Oprah or Michelle or Hillary, and of course Hillary would be the one to do it. I don't think Michelle Obama is going to try and get into office the right way anyway, especially this late in the game. All that she would do at this point would be to force the brokered convention, and then we wouldn't know what was going to be happening. And I know everyone keeps saying that Oprah might go up and she might jump in and run, but I don't think Oprah is going to run. I really don't. And here's the thing with Oprah Winfrey. Now, Oprah Winfrey is great for the progressive cause because she's very popular, she's self-made billionaire, and everybody seems to like her. I mean, there's some skeletons in her closet, but for the most part, she's got a pretty clear record behind her. I mean, the most thing anybody would say to her is that she wastes money by handing out cars to everybody. But it would seem on the top like a progressive dream to do the same, for her to just redistribute the wealth as she saw fit. But the problem with Oprah, and one of the things that I've noticed going along with her rise into fame and power, is that Oprah is self-made. And Oprah, well, she did redistribute wealth and many, many other things as she went along here. One of the things that Oprah Winfrey did not do was ask the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, or the county of Cook to provide any of the free cars or free stuff for her. She did that all out of her own pocket, and that does not mesh well with the progressive agenda. It all needs to go through all charity needs to go through the state in order to be actually charitable, according to the progressive left. Now, of course, they're being taught this because they think that private charity is just a way for people to push up a tax cut, and it's actually more greedy than actually giving out the money, therefore the government needs to do so. But, of course, they're being taught that because the government is sending people down through the schools to teach them this, to make sure that the government gets their cut out of all charity, because, I mean, you can write charity off on your taxes right now, so the government doesn't get a cut off of that. When you give to charity, they don't get that cut off your income. And if it's going through a church, which is the worst thing to them, of course, churches are tax exempt on top of that. So the money that wouldn't have been taxed to begin with is going out to people to not get taxed again. So that's what we're seeing out of this. Now, one of the things that came out of this, of course, and this is something that I have been actually saying for a very, very, very long time, about the way that we are planning on doing things in this country. And I have always said that this presidential race is not necessarily about beating Trump, because he's got an incredible economy that's kind of sitting on a precipice right now. I don't think this is going to last forever, and to be completely fair, I would be really surprised at this point if it lasted through a second term with all of the resistance that's going on to Trump. Now, if everybody sat back and accepted the fact that there are 7 million jobs and used them for wage growth and actually tried to take advantage of this good economy, we actually could see a lot of improvement come out of the Trump economic boom that we've had here. But the problem, of course, is the fact that so many people out here are trying to resist all of this. All they want to do is try and make sure that they want the economy to crash at this point. So they're going to avoid the jobs. They're going to take the welfare as long as they can. And they're going to try and push this economy down, make sure wage growth stays down, and just in general make sure that the economy stagnates and possibly ends. Of course, they want to see it end before the end of this year, but I don't see that happening. Even the big dip that we had so far this year is not enough to derail it, and we had an almost V-shaped rise back into this. I would love to see how the markets end by the end of today. But let's look at a couple headlines here before we get started. Well, we already are started. I apologize for that. So let's talk about Warren again here. This is according to NBC News by Ali Vitali and Sahil Kapoor. Elizabeth Warren, who ran Progressive Grassroots Campaign, ends 2020 run. The Liberal senator was dogged by questions about whether a woman could be elected president. Polls on matchups with Trump in battleground states didn't help. So they're actually looking at some of the matchups rather than just assuming that everything's going to be good. Because remember, across the national stage, everybody beats Trump by a bazillion points. And that's what they've been telling you all across Twitter, because Twitter is real life, everybody. Seriously, Twitter is real life. So, Senator Elizabeth Warren announced Thursday she is suspending her presidential campaign, a bitter blow for a senator who was long seen by prominent Democrats as headed for the White House. And I can confirm that because the idiots over on Pod Save America were screaming her praises just as soon as she got up and got into the race. It was kind of sad to see, really, but of course they said she was the only one that could beat Trump, and I tend to stand with Trump and Shapiro and a few others in my analysis that Gillibrand was probably the one to beat Trump, but she was one of the first ones out. Moving on. Warren said she would not be making an endorsement of another candidate right away. Well, we've got a 33% chance of getting that one right, to be completely honest. And I don't think for a second she's going to put her endorsement behind Tulsi Gabbard. So we might call that one a 50-50, and possibly, I can't even tell. That's going to be a 50-50 toss-up on who she's going to endorse. I will not be running for president in 2020, but I guarantee I will stay in the fight, Warren told reporters and supporters outside her Cambridge, Massachusetts home. In emotional remarks, Warren reflected on the role that sexism... Oh, Jesus Christ. I don't vet these articles before I read them on air, by the way. So I am hearing this for sometimes the first time at the same time as you guys are. I'll read the first paragraph or something, but when I get down to shit like this, I am just as surprised as you guys are. In emotional remarks, Warren reflected on the role that sexism might have played in the campaign, saying, "One of the hardest parts of all this, of this, is all the big promises and all those little girls who are going to have to wait 4 more years." Yes. Okay. So, Warren made huge promises that she had no way of paying for. $53 trillion for a Medicare for All plan that triples the size of our national GDP as it is. We have to make 3 times the money in this country just to pay for the Medicare for All that she has in there. And there's no clear step. I mean, we've got a booming economy right now, but there is no clear step to go there. And of course, this is going to cost more Americans money, so they're going to have to be working harder for less. And of course, I'm going to pay off your school unless you've already paid it off, then fuck you kind of thing. Why did she make it this far? I can't answer that. The thing with Warren, and what really bothered me, of course, was I did think she was trying to hold it out to get the brokered convention. I thought for sure that she was going to try and get the superdelegates behind her. And I thought that for a while because I actually thought that she was Hillary's pick because she is Hillary. She's Hillary Clinton all over again, is what she is. So Of course, as we went on to Twitter now, after all of this happened, immediately a trend started going on about flipping the Senate blue, and I got a tweet over here that I'd like to read. This was just one of the. This is the sentiment that everybody else on Twitter had that was a Warrenite when they decided to be vocal about the fact that Warren was dropping out of the race. Elizabeth C. McLaughlin, 22 hours ago, says, "We better flip the fucking Senate because the only thing that will redeem this is Senate Majority Leader Warren. Say it." And of course, that's all in caps. And that is, first off, Warren is not in line to be the Senate Majority Leader. That's something you have to keep in mind. Chuck Schumer has paid all of his favors already. He has greased the right palms. He's been down on his knees in front of the right lobbyists and donors. He is in line to be the majority leader, not Elizabeth Warren. So something major would have to shift in all of this in order to get Warren to be the majority leader. And they would have to do much better in the Senate than I think is possible right now to do. But I've been saying for quite a while, first off, the Senate is completely under attack because it gives equal representation to smaller states. I made a solo video on this way back. I think it was right after I moved. I think it was the first video I made in the new studio, why the Senate was under attack. So they're under attack to begin with. But the other side of that is, I mean, it would be hard right now for the Senate to flip, but I know this is going to be their pet project. Joe Biden is not going to be the president of the United States. He's got way too much baggage sitting around him, and I think the only reason that they're keeping him up, A, is to hold on to the impeachment thing and try and make it so that they actually had something. I do think that's a part of the reason they're throwing all their support behind Biden right now, is so that this impeachment wasn't a complete waste. Because if Warren or Sanders had made it to the top, or Buttigieg for that matter, if any of them had made it to the top, then all that Trump would be doing would be investigating a private citizen who had very, very questionable foreign ties. Of course, because Biden is the front runner for the Democrat Party, he's a political adversary at this point. So, yeah, now they're vindicated in what they tried to impeach him on. So, I think that plays into a part of it. So, and, of course, they're looking for a Mondale at this point because with the economy sitting the way it is, I don't think he can win. But I always said they're going to make a play for the Senate because they need to have the Senate flip to a point where they at least have a simple majority in the Democrats' favor, because that will block whoever the replacement is for Ginsburg. Ginsburg is not going to make it through a second Trump term. There's no way. There is no physical way she makes it another 5 years. And it's morbid for me to say, but there's absolutely no way she makes it another 5 years. So they want to make sure that they can keep that seat empty until 2024 and use it as a campaign wedge issue. Either that, or they are going to use it as their wedge issue to try and make sure that that Trump doesn't get elected coming up, which that's something I could see as well, to try and have Ginsburg retire in like September, October this coming year, so they can't vet somebody and they can use it as a wedge issue. But they misunderstand the point that McConnell can ram whoever the nominee is through in a day with a simple vote. So that's going to turn around to backfire on them if they try and do that. But if they don't try and do that, Ginsburg is not going to make it to 2024. I'm sorry to say that. I'm sorry to Ginsburg's family, but she's not going to make it to 2024. So, the last story that I have up on this, of course, is as soon as I turned the camera off, I saw that Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, which when she made the counter to the State of the Union, I actually thought it was the Mean Girls girl, Gretchen Wiener. But, of course, that wasn't who it was. But Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer endorses Biden ahead of state's primary. So she's pandering. She's trying to get, because Michigan very narrowly swung for Trump. And it's going to be one of those, I don't know if Michigan is going to be the one that swings it the other way. Wisconsin definitely is going to be the battleground coming up. And whichever way Wisconsin swings is going to really see who the president is going to be. But of course, Governor Whitmer is trying to force Michigan into the former vice president's camp. So we have from Politico, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer endorses Biden ahead of state's primary. This is from Quint 4G. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer backed former Vice President Joe Biden's White House bid on Thursday, endorsing less than a week before the state's Democrat presidential primary. I've been watching this campaign play out, and there's been sources of inspiration in a variety of candidates. But as we go into Michigan's election on Tuesday, I am going to be voting for Joe Biden, Whitmer told MSNBC's Morning Joe. Whitmer, a Democrat elected in 2018, said her reasoning behind supporting Biden was partly grounded in her experiences nearly 2 decades ago, taking care of my mom at the end of her battle with brain cancer and rearing my new child, and fighting an insurance company that was wrongfully denying her chemotherapy. Well, Biden wants to go back to the old way and back to the ACA, so I don't know that throwing your support behind him with that in mind is going to be the best thing for you, but I digress. So it's going to be interesting to see where Michigan goes in November. Of course, the primary is just going to be Democrats out, but I believe Michigan, like Wisconsin, is an open primary, so it's also going to be interesting to see how many people go out there and grab that Dem ballot and try and shake the race back up. Maybe a bunch of people will go in and vote Tulsi. Who knows? I would love to see that, by the way. I would love to see Tulsi walk away with delegates from Michigan. I would love to see that. And she's not running for her House seat. So she's not beholden to the DNC right now either. She has no race coming up right now. She can do whatever she wants. And she can stick it right to the DNC because I think they stuck it right to her. All right. That is enough of 2020. In other news, we've got... I actually heard this in the same news story, in the same news brief that I heard about Warren dropping out here on my way to work yesterday. And this doesn't surprise me because Tony Evers is just a shill for the DNC. He's a shill for the teachers union, which is shills for the DNC, and it doesn't surprise me at all that he's jumping on this. And the people in this state don't care for that. I don't know how, well, I do know how he got elected, and I'm pretty sure it was cheating, but I can't obviously prove that. It's one of those things of ballots in a trunk again. Oh, we found 3,000 ballots stuck together and we had to go and hand count them right at the 0 hour in a race that was neck and neck, and it was just enough ballots to get Evers over the edge where it didn't trigger an automatic recount. So I don't care for Evers, and I don't think he's legitimate. I think Scott Walker should have pushed that one, but to be completely honest, that is between Evers and Scott Walker. But this is from The Blaze. 19 states sue Trump administration over the use of Department of Defense funds for border wall construction. Now, I heard about this on a local brief because Wisconsin just became the latest state to join this lawsuit. This is from Nate Madden. The seemingly never-ending legal efforts against the Trump administration's construction of a southern border wall continues on Tuesday afternoon with a federal lawsuit filed by 19 U.S. states. The 77-page lawsuit, which was filed in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California, takes issue with the administration's latest diversion of defense funds to construct the border wall and claims that the plaintiffs seek to protect their residents, National Guard units, natural resources, and sovereign economic interests from the harm caused by President Donald J. Trump's flagrant disregard of fundamental separation of powers principles ingrained in the United States Constitution. Now, this is wrong. Because of the way that the Pentagon is allocated, this is not separation of powers. This is actually the strengthening of powers. And of course, Congress has tried to block this both times, with the veto coming from the president's desk, and of course the Supreme Court ruling that the veto had the power to hold. So, this isn't going anywhere. I can promise you this is going to go to the Supreme Court somewhere, and this is not going to go anywhere. But it's something to keep everything into the news and make sure that people are still talking about it, and people are still trying to see the Orange Man as evil and bad. So I don't want to go too much further into this because we've heard a lot of this before, but I do want to give the list of the states that are joining into this just in case anybody was curious as to which states were going on into this. So a few lines down, we see the states listed as plaintiffs in the complaint are California, New Mexico, Colorado, Hawaii, Virginia, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Wisconsin, which, I mean, we have a couple of people that, or a couple states rather, in this that are a little bit redder or purpler, but for the most part, this is a big blue bulwark that's going on into this, which is no surprise, of course. And given the fact that our current governor in this state is a shill for the teachers' union, we're not surprised by any of this. On other news, we have daylight savings time coming up, but the Wall Street Journal is reporting that this may not be a good idea. Let's see what the Wall Street Journal has to say on this. This is from Sumathi Reddy. I apologize if I'm butchering this name. Early Sunday morning, most people in America will spring forward and move their clocks 1 hour ahead to daylight savings time. Oh, you paywall bastards. Okay. I guess I've read the Wall Street Journal on this computer, but I haven't read it enough on the computer that I looked at this for the first time, so I'm going to have to do this a bit from memory. So essentially, the shift in sleep patterns that come every other year, or twice a year rather, are causing health problems, sleep arrhythmia, and heart problems in some patients out of this. I can't believe they stuck that behind a paywall. I was going to use that too. Anyway, so yeah, health experts are doing surveys out to see whether or not these problems are severe enough to actually petition the U.S. government to end daylight savings time. And I would actually, of course, we all like it in the fall when we get an extra hour of sleep, but or an extra hour of drinking if we're between 21 and 25, because of course that affects bar time from when it all hits. But what they're looking for on this is to see if there are other benefits, or there would be other benefits to end all of this, and I do think it would be good. It all happens on a Sunday, so people who work on a Sunday are the ones that are affected the most. But I mean, for an extra week, nobody's productive, especially in some of these states. And some states out there actually don't observe daylight savings time. I know in Arizona, for half of the year they're in Pacific time and half the year they're in Mountain time because they don't believe in daylight savings time and they don't observe it. They just flip on the time zone as they go along. So it'll be interesting to see how this all goes and what comes out of this. I do wish I could have read more of this article for you because there was some interesting text into it, but we'll move on. In other news, this is from ABC News, which is taking it from the Associated Press. Let's make sure we don't have some video tries to play here. All right, it's muted. Food stamp change fuels anxiety to states, or as states try to curb impact. This is from Sophia Tureen in the Associated Press, reporting for ABC News. Chicago, having food stamps offers Richard Butler a stability he's rarely known in his 25 years. He was in state custody at age 2, spent his teen years at a Chicago boys' home and jail for burglary, and has since struggled to find permanent home. The $194 deposited monthly on his benefits card buys fresh produce and meat. And that's all well and good. So the rules that they're citing when they talk about this as well. This is, of course, trying to be a sob story of what will happen to the children and whatnot. The law that they're citing is a law or an executive order that came from the Trump administration, saying that if you are between, I believe it's 18 and 49, so most of your adult life, and you have no dependent children, and that's important. If you have no dependent children at all, or no dependent wife or anything else like that, if you have no dependents and you're in working age, the Trump administration wants you to get a part-time job or volunteer to put something into society if you're getting food stamps, or be in a job training program, one of the three things in order to get food stamps. Now, first and foremost, this does not affect people who have children or dependents on their taxes. This does not affect them at all, which is, of course, if you go through this ABC News article, that's exactly who they are trying to push this toward, is the people who have the children, who the children are going to starve, and that's who they're trying to scare out of all of this. But no. If you are between the ages of 18 and 49, you have no children, it should not be too much to ask for you to go and sweep up behind a convenience store or be in a training program to try and help get you back into the workforce rather than staying on the food stamp system forever. And like I said, they're not denying them food stamps at all. They're just trying to put a stipulation in there to try and curb the spending off of all this. And think of it too. If you're working part-time and you're getting the food stamps, you're using those food stamps for your food. You can take that part-time money, and this is of course on the up and up and doing it the legal way, because I know people sell those things for cash to try and get other things out of this. But I mean, if you're working there and you want to buy a pack of cigarettes, food stamps don't buy cigarettes, so you can go out and buy a pack of cigarettes. If you want a bottle of vodka, food stamps don't buy vodka. So that little bit of work that you're doing, it gives you some freedom off of this and the ability to enjoy some other things that you wouldn't normally otherwise be able to enjoy if you were just sitting on the system. So I don't see why this is a bad thing, but of course, everybody who is opposed to this is opposed to taking the food away from the children and destroying families and this and that and the next thing. And it doesn't affect families. Social service agencies say they won't be able to fill the gap, making increased homelessness, more hospital visits among the biggest concerns. Experts say they've already seen troubling signs in some states. One of the other things too, and I know that a lot of people are saying, well, some of these people have their kids and they're not dependents because they're not married. And I've seen that argument. That argument is not in this article, but I've seen that article before. And all I can say to that is marry your baby mama. Then you have dependents. Then you don't have to worry about it. I still think you should get a job, but you have dependents. You can play the system however you want. So I think this is a good thing. I think this is another fear-mongering tactic to try and the jobs report just came out too. I didn't have that on the stack, but I saw that on Twitter right before we came in. And for February, we just had 253,000 jobs added for the month of February, and that is including the downturn that we had in the Dow this month. So the jobs report is out. We only have 3% wage growth at this point, and we could probably do better. But the jobs are there. It's not going to be hard for you to get a part-time job and supplement the income that the government's helping you with. So the last thing that I have out here, of course, has to do with Mr. Clinton. Because if it's not one Clinton in the news story, it is the other. So according to a New York Post, Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky affair was to manage my anxieties. How did we go from I did not have sexual relations with that woman to I needed that woman to manage the anxieties of being president? This is... And of course, we open up the New York Post and you see a video with Hill Dog right off of there. And this is an opinion piece too, so it's got some spicy stuff coming up in the beginning. This is from Lee Brown and Tamir Lapine. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. I am terrible with names, especially ones that did not necessarily originate in English-speaking countries. That probably sounded really bad, and that's going to be the one that gets clipped out of this and gets my channel shut down. But hey, we've got D-Live. He's never heard of Prozac. Bill Clinton waves off his tawdry affair with then White House intern Monica Lewinsky in a new documentary by saying it was something he did to manage my anxiety. The ex-president in the upcoming Hulu series, Hillary, about his wife, likens working in the Oval Office to being a boxer staggering around after a 15-round prize fight that's been extended to 30 rounds. And here's something that'll take your mind off it for a while. Clinton, 73, says of his 2-year tryst with Lewinsky that began in 1995 when she was 22. Everybody's life has pressures and disappointments, terrors, fears, whatever. He continues, things I did to manage my anxieties for years. I don't even know what to say to this. This is just stupid. This is beyond stupid at this point. I can't believe he's coming out and admit... Well, obviously we all know that he did it, so... It's no surprise that he's coming out and actually owning up to it at this point because, I mean, Wanda Sykes said way back in the beginning that, yes, you got to stick with your lie. And, of course, the former president has not stuck with his lie. he came out and said he didn't have sex with that woman, and he got slapped with perjury for it, and now he's coming out and admitting it. But there are better ways to manage your stress than breaking federal. Actually, I don't know if he broke a federal law. I know that they put the rules into place at the point, but to break ethics like that on top of it, I mean, you are the most powerful person in the world. And you're married to somebody who will kill anybody that crosses her. There's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to manage your stress than porking some girls fresh out of college. There's got to be. I mean, I understand the appeal, don't get me wrong. I was single for quite a while in my 20s, but geez, if there was that kind of power dynamic, I couldn't even imagine trying to do something like that. Everything that you do is under a microscope, and especially now in the internet age, everything you do is under a microscope. Clinton, at least at the time, had the advantage of the media running cover for him and no real way to vet it, the internet still being in its infancy, but will these two never get out of the news? I can't believe Hulu is making a series on these two either, to be completely honest. How much money had to exchange hands to make this happen? And with this coming out, I mean, are we still trying to humanize Hillary at this point so she can make her contested convention run for the presidency? Which, oh God, please let that happen. I would love to see those debates happen a second time. I would take that to see those debates, knowing full well the fact that I would take the loss, that knowing full well that Hillary will never leave Wisconsin if she gets nominated again. So that's what I have on all of this today. This is Friday, of course, so I promised earlier on in the week that on Friday we were going to shout out all of the people who are chatting in the live chat for this, because I don't read live chat normally on the air for the majority of the week, but I'm going to check what we have now, and I'm going to shout out the people who chatted earlier on in the week, whose names I have written down out here. So I've got Never Evil for today. We've got Never Evil, Happy Friday. Ron Helton, Sully Blue came in, finally caught while live. Never Evil is back again. And that's who I have running today. And of course, we want to shout out Seawall728, who was in a couple times earlier in the week. The R-Rated Conservative, who was in earlier. Jessica Green, who showed up yesterday. Yamafago, who showed up on Tuesday. And the R-Rated Conservative, who showed up earlier on in the week. Thank you to everybody who has helped make this first week of Contemporary successful. I'm going to continue to practice, try and make this better, get more news out here for you, and make sure that we get up a little bit earlier than I did obviously today, and make sure that we get the audios out so they're ready for most people's morning commutes. I'm really, really happy that we got this going. I'm really happy to be able to share this with you every day. And of course, we will be out for the weekend. We're going to let everybody have their weekend again. We'll let the news stories collect the news and try and make the world end again on Monday again. We will be back here early on Monday for another episode of Contemporary, and we will be back here Monday night to see Mrs. RRC on Ed's World. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining us. And for Contemporary, my name is Jay Edgar.